So have you ever wondered why women who either reject you or ghost you suddenly or eventually come back? It's a question that quietly lingers in the hearts of men who chose to walk forward instead of chasing what slipped away. And the answer isn't coincidence, it's not destiny, and it's never just timing. More often than not, it's a reflection of patterns, of human nature, of shifting perceptions, and sometimes of deep unspoken regret. Sometimes she comes back because she realized too late what she gave up. Sometimes it's not love, but strategy. Other times it's simply the nature of how desire works. What we ignore begins to haunt us, and what we lose begins to shine brighter in our memory. In this video, I'll walk you through 7 honest reasons why a woman who once let you go may find her way back to you. I was going to share 5, but some lessons are too important to leave out. And more than that, I'll share what truly matters, what to do with that return, how to respond with strength instead of ego, with clarity instead of chaos. If this resonates with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this message with a man who needs to hear it. You're not just moving on, you're rising in silence. This is Stoic Station, where we speak strength, walk in truth, and grow without permission. And now, let's begin with the first reason. Reason number 1. They see your growth. When she walked away, she didn't walk away from the man you are today. She walked away from the man you were still becoming. In that moment, maybe you were unsure of yourself. Maybe you were in a transition, financially, emotionally, mentally. She didn't see the potential because she wasn't patient enough to wait for the unveiling. And truthfully, she didn't need to be. Her departure wasn't a betrayal, it was a blessing in disguise. Because sometimes it takes someone leaving for you to finally meet yourself. In the quiet days that followed, there was no dramatic transformation. No Instagram-worthy glow-up, no loud declarations of revenge or redemption, just the slow, steady discipline of a man who decided to rise, not to impress her, not to win her back, but to reclaim the pieces of himself he once gave away too freely. You didn't chase, you didn't explain, you didn't beg for closure. Instead, you turned your pain into momentum, and your silence into strength. You leaned into the discomfort. You built new habits, new standards, and new boundaries. And while no one applauded your efforts behind closed doors, the results began to speak for themselves. Months passed, life unfolded. You became sharper, not out of bitterness, but because you finally stopped shrinking to fit into someone else's vision of what a man should be. Your presence shifted, your energy changed, and though you didn't broadcast it, your growth left footprints in every space you entered. Friends noticed, opportunities found you, confidence returned, not the kind that's loud and performative, but the kind that walks into a room and commands respect without saying a word. Then one day, out of nowhere, she sees it. Maybe it's a picture, your shoulders broader, your smile more grounded. Maybe it's a mutual friend casually mentioning your name with admiration. Or maybe she stumbles upon your page and finds a man who no longer needs her gaze to feel valuable. And in that moment, something stirs in her, not just curiosity, but fear. It's the fear of missing out, the fear that she miscalculated, that while she was busy entertaining other options, the man she once dismissed became the version of himself she didn't believe he could be. It's not jealousy, it's not even guilt. It's the sharp sting of realizing that what once felt so ordinary was actually extraordinary in the making. And this fear doesn't scream, it lingers, quietly, persistently. It makes her replay the last conversation, reread old texts, wonder what might have happened if she had stayed just a little longer. But she didn't. She left. And now she's realizing The silence you gave her wasn't empty. It was filled with all the things she never took the time to see. You didn't evolve out of spite. You didn't grow because you wanted her to regret losing you. You grew because something inside you knew your value was never meant to be proven to someone who couldn't see it in the first place. Her absence didn't break you, it gave you space. And in that space, you built a life she no longer recognizes. Now, when she looks back, she doesn't see the man she rejected. She sees the man she never truly knew. And that realization, that's what keeps her up at night. Because now, your silence is louder than her rejection ever was. And your growth? It speaks for itself. Reason number 2. They think you're going to chase them. When she pulled away, she didn't expect silence. She expected pursuit. That's the dynamic she's seen play out before. The same pattern, the same roles, the same tired script. A woman distances herself, the man panics, and suddenly he's overcompensating, sending long texts, trying to fix something he didn't break, proving his worth to someone who already questioned it. That's what she expected from you. But you didn't chase, you didn't plead, you didn't rush in with apologies or try to decode the sudden shift in her tone. Instead, you stood still. And in that stillness, something shifted, not just for you, but for her. Because in a world where most men fold under the pressure of distance and silence, your calm unsettled her. Your lack of reaction didn't scream weakness. It revealed strength. The kind of strength that doesn't perform, doesn't beg, doesn't chase approval. And the truth is, she wasn't just testing your emotions, she was testing your identity. She wanted to know, were you like the others? Would you dance for her validation, shrink for her affection, bend at the first sign of rejection? But instead of shrinking, you expanded. You didn't lose your center. You didn't fall into the trap of over-explaining yourself to someone who had already made up her mind. You didn't become a man who needed to be chosen to feel worthy. You chose yourself, and that, more than anything, confused her. Because the moment you chose not to chase, you broke the rhythm she was used to. And silence, when unexpected, becomes louder than any argument or desperate text. It forces reflection. It creates space. It makes her question her assumptions, and sometimes even her decision. That's the paradox most people don't understand. The absence of action is often the strongest action of all. By not playing into her emotional bait, you forced her to confront her own behavior. Her withdrawal was supposed to trigger something in you, but it didn't. And that unsettled the power dynamic she thought she was controlling. In your silence, she began to wonder, why didn't he come after me? In your stillness, she asked herself, did I misread him? And slowly curiosity turned to craving, not because she missed your affection, but because she missed the control. What once felt predictable suddenly became uncertain, and uncertainty when tied to attraction becomes magnetic. What makes a man powerful is not how loudly he reacts, but how calmly he refuses to. There's a certain quiet confidence in knowing who you are and what you deserve, and refusing to hand that identity over even when emotions are high. But make no mistake, your refusal to chase wasn't a game. It wasn't passive-aggressive. It wasn't you pretending not to care while secretly hoping she'd come back. It was deeper than that. It was you honoring your value. It was you acknowledging that real connection cannot be one-sided, cannot be earned through desperation, cannot be sustained through performance. You understood something most men learn too late. Affection that requires chasing turns into a performance, and performances always end in exhaustion. So you let go, not because you were angry, but because you were at peace with reality. She showed you who she was, and you believed her. That decision, the decision to believe what people show you instead of rewriting their behavior with hopeful imagination, is what makes you emotionally bulletproof. And yes, in the days or weeks that followed, you may have felt the sting. The silence wasn't easy. There were moments where you picked up your phone, tempted to send a message. You might have replayed conversations in your head, wondering what you could have said differently. That's human. That's real. But you didn't act on those impulses because you understood that silence isn't weakness, it's a boundary, and boundaries protect not just your time, but your dignity. And in protecting that dignity, you created space for clarity. And then, just like that, she returned. Maybe it started with a casual message. "Hey, how have you been?" Maybe it was a comment on something you posted. Or maybe she didn't say anything at all, but you saw her name pop up in your story views, lingering. That's often how it starts, not with a grand apology, but with a subtle probe to see if the door is still open. Why? Because what brought her back wasn't love. It wasn't necessarily regret. It was confusion. Her blueprint told her that men chase when women withdraw. But you didn't. You rewrote the script. And now she needs to know why. And this is where your strength will be tested, not when she leaves, but when she comes back. Because it's easy to maintain composure when you're hurt and distant. It's harder when validation shows up, knocking. When the very person who rejected you now wants a piece of the man you became in her absence. But remember this, just because someone returns doesn't mean they've changed. Sometimes they come back to see if you still need them. Sometimes they return just to feel wanted again. Not because they've grown, but because they're uncomfortable with your growth without them. A man who knows his worth doesn't confuse attention for commitment. He doesn't mistake curiosity for love. And he doesn't abandon the peace he built just to reopen a door that was closed for good reason. So when she comes back, and she might, you don't respond with revenge. You don't gloat. You don't try to prove how well you're doing. You remain calm, unshaken, because nothing is more powerful than a man who doesn't flinch when old chaos returns. You don't need to punish her. You don't need to let her back in either. You simply remember who you are and what you've learned. And if you decide to engage again, you do so from a place of wholeness, not hunger. Because the most attractive man in the room isn't the loudest. He isn't the one who talks the most or demands attention. He's the one who walks away when respect leaves the table and never looks back. And that is the man she didn't expect to meet. Not back then, not now. But it's the man you became when you refused to chase what was already walking away. And in doing so, you gave her the only answer she needed. You didn't disappear out of weakness. You walked away in strength. And the silence that followed wasn't a tactic. It was truth. You don't chase what isn't aligned. You don't pursue what doesn't stay. Because the man you are now doesn't wait to be chosen. He chooses himself every time. Reason number 3. They miss your attention. Not every woman who returns does so out of love. Sometimes it's something far more subtle, more self-serving. She misses being seen, not for who she is deep down, but for how you made her feel when your focus was on her. You gave her attention that wasn't generic. It was specific, intentional, the way you listened, the way you noticed the small things, the way you remembered details she thought no one else would ever care about. That kind of presence makes a woman feel significant. It lights something up inside her, and when that light goes out, some part of her notices the darkness. So when she returns, it's not always about you. Often it's about the version of herself she felt she could be when you were looking her way. And now that your attention is elsewhere, now that your energy has been reclaimed, there's a void, a silence, a mirror with no reflection. The truth is, your presence became a kind of mirror for her self-worth. Not a distorted one, but a comforting one. one she could glance into and feel admired, validated, maybe even adored. But when that mirror disappeared, she was left with herself. And that's not always a place people want to sit with for too long. This is where your emotional clarity matters most. You have to ask yourself, does she miss you, or does she miss how you made her feel? Is she back because she truly sees value in building something lasting, or is she simply trying to quiet the noise inside her, filling the silence with your attention once again? Because if it's the latter, you need to protect your energy. A woman who only loves the spotlight you cast on her won't stand beside you when the stage is dark. She'll vanish the moment she's not the center of it. So pay close attention, not just to what she says, but to what she seeks. If her return feels like a search for validation, not connection, you owe it to yourself to stay grounded. You are not a source of temporary light for someone who fears their own shadow. You are not an ego refill station. You are a man whose attention is sacred, and it should only be given where it is truly seen and truly earned. Reason number 4. Her relationship ended. Sometimes her rejection wasn't personal. It wasn't about you, your effort, your value, or how you showed up. It was about timing, plain and simple. When you first crossed paths, she may have already been involved with someone else, emotionally entangled or in a committed relationship, even if it wasn't openly stated. And whether out of loyalty, confusion, or fear of chaos, she chose not to pursue anything with you. You weren't even in the picture, not because you weren't good enough, but because the picture was already full. So she walked away. Or perhaps she never truly leaned in. She left you with silence, or a polite decline, or a vague excuse that felt more like avoidance than honesty. And for a moment, it stung. You may have wondered what you lacked, what you could have done differently. But the truth is, her decision had far more to do with where she was than with who you are. Now things have changed. That relationship, the one that had her loyalty, has ended. Whether it ended in betrayal, disillusionment, or just the quiet unraveling of two people drifting apart, it's over. And in the echo of that ending, she remembers you. She remembers your presence, your energy, the ease of your connection, and the stability you offered. And so, she returns. This isn't always manipulation. Sometimes it's real, sometimes it's regret. But as a man who's grown in the time since, you have to ask yourself the question with honest clarity. Is she coming back because she truly sees your value now? Or is she simply reaching out because her comfort collapsed and she's looking for something, anything, to replace it? There's a fine line between being someone's genuine second chance and being someone's emotional crutch. And the difference lies not in what she says, but in what she shows and how you respond. You are not a rebound. You are not a placeholder. You are not a band-aid for a heart that broke elsewhere. You are a man with standards, a man who's learned to pause and reflect before reopening a door that once closed. Her past decision may have been circumstantial, but your current decision must be intentional. If she only sees you clearly after she's been broken elsewhere, make sure she's not just looking for shelter. Make sure she's coming to build, not to borrow peace from your presence. This is your responsibility, not to judge, but to discern, not to punish her for the past, but to protect what you've built in her absence. Because you are not Plan B. You are not someone she should only remember when all else fails. You are a man who doesn't need to be chosen late to know his worth. So if her relationship ended and she now sees you standing tall, grounded and unbothered, let her return be met not with resentment, but with wisdom. Ask the right questions. Observe the truth between her words. And above all, remember, a woman coming back isn't proof of your value. How you respond when she does, that's where your strength lives. Reason number 5. They see you're happy being alone. This one cuts deeper than most men realize, because it's not loud. It doesn't show up in angry text messages or bitter goodbyes. It reveals itself in the quiet moments after rejection, in the silence that follows when the world expects you to fall apart, and you don't. Most men, after being pushed away, collapse inward. They spiral. They scroll endlessly through her social media, post vague quotes hoping she'll read between the lines, or seek shallow validation from people they don't care about. They try to fill the space she left behind with noise, thinking that the noise will distract them from the ache. But not you. You did something rare. You didn't run toward distraction. You didn't self-destruct or lash out. You did the harder thing. You sat with the silence. You let it wash over you. And in doing so, you found something few ever do after rejection: peace. At first, it wasn't glamorous. Healing rarely is. There were mornings that felt heavy, nights that stretched on longer than they should have. You had your doubts. You replayed conversations in your mind, questioned what you could have done differently, and probably wondered if you ever truly meant anything to her. But even through that quiet pain, you never tried to prove your worth to someone who had already walked away. You stayed still, not frozen but grounded. You went back to the gym, not to impress her, but to feel strong again. You stopped checking your phone every 10 minutes. You started eating better, sleeping more, reading books that had been gathering dust. You reconnected with old friends, re-established your rhythm, and slowly, your days became yours again. And the most beautiful part? You stopped needing her to notice. But here's the paradox. It's precisely when you no longer needed her validation that she began to notice the most. That's how human nature works. We tend to chase what's pulling away. We become obsessed with what no longer needs us. And women, especially those who expected you to spiral, feel it sharply when your joy no longer depends on their presence. It's not just that you've moved on, it's that you've become whole, and that kind of wholeness is magnetic. Now she wonders, how did he not fall apart? How did he find contentment in my absence? Who did he become when I stopped watching? Because when she left, she may have assumed that your identity was, at least in part, wrapped up in her. She thought she was the source of your happiness, the object of your desire, the light that kept you going. But now she sees, she was never the center. She was just a moment in your story. And that realization, it haunts her. There's something incredibly unsettling to someone who believed they were the reason you smiled when they discover you're smiling without them. It disrupts their narrative. It makes them question whether their impact was as deep as they once assumed. I remember a moment years ago when I lived through this exact truth. There was a woman I had deeply cared for, someone I had poured time, energy, patience, and vulnerability into. She was charming, magnetic, the kind of person who could command a room without trying. We had a brief, passionate connection, but when she pulled away, it was abrupt, cold even. No explanations, no closure, just silence. I'll be honest, for a few weeks it wrecked me. I went through the motions, kept showing up to work, kept replying to texts, but inside, I was unraveling. The silence from her felt deafening, and yet something in me refused to reach out. I wasn't trying to be strong. I simply didn't want to chase someone who had made it clear they didn't want to stay. So I turned inward. I took a solo weekend trip to the mountains. No distractions, no signal, just space. I hiked, journaled, read philosophy by the fire. I asked myself hard questions, not about her, but about me. Why did I feel so shaken? What wound was I really tending to? And that weekend changed everything. I came back to the city a quieter man, but not in a broken way, in a grounded way. I returned with a calmer presence, more aware of what I brought to the table. I stopped posting altogether. I stopped watching her stories. I began showing up more fully in my own life. The gym became a ritual, not a performance. My work deepened. My sleep improved. I found beauty in my own company again. And then, 3 months later, she messaged me. It was subtle. "I saw your name pop up on a friend's post. Hope you're doing well." But I knew what it was. It wasn't just small talk. It was a pulse check. It was curiosity stirred by silence. I responded kindly, but briefly, and as I put my phone down, I felt nothing but peace. She wasn't the villain in my story, but she wasn't the hero either. I was. And that's the deeper truth behind this idea. When a woman sees that you're happy being alone, truly whole in your solitude, she starts to question everything, not because she wants to save you, but because she doesn't understand how you saved yourself. And here's what you need to remember. Your wholeness is not a weapon. It's not something to wield as revenge. It's not about making her feel small or proving a point. It's about liberation. It's about becoming so rooted in your own identity that no one's departure can pull the ground out from under you. A man who is whole by himself becomes irresistible, not for what he gives, but for what he doesn't need. He doesn't need constant reassurance. He doesn't need to be chosen to feel worthy. He doesn't need validation to feel seen. He simply is. And that kind of man doesn't chase. He attracts. He doesn't beg. He builds. He doesn't break under rejection. He rises through it. So if she returns after seeing your piece, let her return be met with clarity, not arrogance, not resentment, just truth. Because the man you became while she was gone deserves someone who sees his solitude not as a threat, but as a sign of strength. And if she can't match the stillness you fought to earn, let her pass through, not stay. Let her witness your growth, but don't offer her a seat at a table she once walked away from. You were never meant to prove your worth by unraveling. You were meant to reveal your power in the quiet. That's what you did, and that's what she sees now. You're not just okay without her, you're complete, and that kind of peace, that's the most irresistible thing of all. Reason number 6. You have a new woman, social proof. There's a peculiar shift that happens the moment another woman chooses you, especially when she carries grace, strength, and discernment. Suddenly, the man who was once ignored, dismissed, or second-guessed is no longer invisible. He is seen, not just by the new woman who recognizes his value, but by the one who once overlooked him. It's not magic, it's wiring. Women, whether consciously or not, are attuned to social proof. It's part of our psychological fabric. When another woman, particularly one who is confident and high value, decides you're worth her time, it sends a message. A silent signal that perhaps you were more than what was originally perceived. That maybe, just maybe, she missed something important. And in that realization, a new kind of attention forms. The one who let you go starts watching. Maybe she sees you in photos. Maybe mutual friends mention your name again. Maybe she stumbles upon your presence on social media and notices the way you move differently now, with grounded confidence and quiet purpose. She doesn't just see a man with someone new. She sees a man who was worth more than she gave herself permission to see. But this is where your discernment becomes your armor, because not all attention is admiration, and not all returns are real. Sometimes what draws her back isn't affection, it's competition, not love, but ego. The desire to reclaim what she never valued until someone else did. And you must remember, you are not a prize because someone else wants you. You are a prize because of the man you chose to become when no one was watching, because of the values you live by, the character you built, and the peace you earned without performance. Let your growth attract. It will. But let your standards decide who stays. Anyone can admire you from a distance, but only those who saw your worth before the applause deserve a seat beside you when the music stops. Reason number 7, they regret letting you go. Every now and then, the regret is real. It's not a tactic, not a performance. It's something deeper. A quiet, persistent ache that creeps in when she finally realizes what she walked away from. She once believed someone else had more to offer. Maybe he was more exciting, more unpredictable, more convenient at the time. She thought she was trading up. She thought the grass was greener, but time has a way of humbling illusions. Eventually, reality catches up. And what once seemed shiny begins to lose its luster. The charm fades. The promises fall short. And in the space where excitement used to be, she starts to remember you. Not the version of you she rejected, but the one she overlooked. The one who showed up, who cared, even when it was inconvenient. The one who stayed grounded when others chased attention. You weren't the flashiest or the loudest, but you were the most real. Now she regrets letting you go. But here's where your growth turns into power. You don't need her regret to validate you. You don't need her return to feel redeemed. Because the man you've become isn't fueled by who comes back, but by how well you moved forward without them. If she reaches out, you don't have to respond with bitterness. You don't have to use your progress as a weapon. You get to respond with something much stronger: clarity. You can choose to forgive, or you can choose to walk away with peace. Either way, you're no longer reacting to her absence. You're choosing based on your presence. This is your final power move. Not revenge, but wisdom. Not ego, but self-respect. Because this journey was never about proving her wrong. It was about proving to yourself that you never needed to chase love to be worthy of it. And now, as she looks back, you stand as a mirror, not of what she lost, but of everything she didn't stay long enough to understand. Let your peace speak louder than your pain. You were never meant to chase what chose to walk away. That's not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the understanding that your worth isn't something to be negotiated in someone else's confusion. You weren't built to beg for love, to explain your value, or to shrink yourself in the hope that someone finally sees you. You were made to evolve, quietly, steadily, without applause. You were made to rise in silence, to rebuild with strength, and to grow into the kind of man who doesn't need validation to know his direction. And whether they return or not, that doesn't define your value. Their absence didn't destroy you, and their return won't complete you. Because the real transformation happened when you decided that peace was more important than approval, that healing didn't require closure from anyone else, that your path wasn't meant to be shared with someone who didn't choose to walk beside you when it mattered. But if they do come back, if they find their way to your door again, let them encounter someone they no longer recognize, a man they can't manipulate, a soul they can't shake. Let them feel the weight of who you've become, not because you need to prove anything, but because you've outgrown the need to prove yourself at all. Your silence isn't emptiness, it's power. Your stillness isn't passivity, it's presence. And your peace, the one you fought so hard to build, speaks louder now than any pain ever could. Hold on to it, guard it. Let it be the response they never expected, the closure they were never ready for. If this message echoes something inside you, if it reminds you of who you truly are beneath the noise, then take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this with another man who's walking the same quiet path. This is Stoic Station, where strength is calm, where truth is sacred, and where we rise without permission.